something that really has stood out for me working with young children is the level of trauma that they've been exposed to and how it's been normalized sometimes by their family members because we don't talk about it. Actually, one young lady was with her father when he was murdered, and so she actually bear witness to that.
I created. Thanks for sharing. It's a safe space for us to share ideas and triumphs. We uncover intersections that don't always make headlines. Let's take a journey together to discover what other Black people find when we share on Thanks for Sharing.
So my name is Sadiqa Long. I am the oldest of 4 children. I grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C. to a single mom. I've had a passion for education ever since I could remember. The last 15 years of education for me and professional identity has been counseling. I decided to go back to school, get a doctoral degree in counselor education and supervision. Something that really has stood out for me working with young children is the level of trauma that they've been exposed to and how it's been normalized sometimes by their family members because we don't talk about it. And so just being able to have my print into the world and give back to the community to help those families be able to have those hard conversations, to navigate resources in their community, to understand that they should not be ashamed to ask for help or get the support they need is why I continue to do this work that I do.
So first and foremost, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I think this is a great platform that you're doing.
Can you tell me about your project with trauma in general? I know that was your dissertation when you were getting your doctorate degree.
When I was in my doctoral program, at the time I was working as a school counselor in an early childhood program. And I had about 6 or 7 students who had lost parents that year. So the grief, the resources, and I was at the time, I have to honestly say, ill prepared to help those students and families, right? So I know how to do counseling. I know how to do grief counseling. However, because there were so many families affected, I really didn't know what that looked like. Like a lot of teachers just said they really were ill prepared to work with these young babies.
More than 2/3 of children report experiencing exposure to trauma by the age of 16. And more than 25% have exposure to sexual abuse. Some of the behaviors can be displayed in children as a result of seeing trauma. New fears, separation anxiety, nightmares, lack of concentration, anger, a decline in schoolwork, and irritability, to name a few.
Actually, one young lady was with her father when he was murdered, and so she actually bear witness to that. And the other children, of course, they didn't see their parents die, but they still had to come to school with that. And so seeing their family members cry in front of them, talk about it, attending funerals, and really not knowing, what that meant for a loss of a parent. So I had to use a lot of bibliotherapy. It's a very good technique when working with young children and sometimes helping them build their own social stories, right?
So you tell the children stories about traumatic events and they can then sort of connect with it but not internalize it. They see the story but they're not exactly a part of the story.
Right. So we would read stories about the loss of maybe a pet or a toy or something like that, but they would connect. So these young kids, even though they're 3 through 6, they're very resilient and they're very smart, and they would connect the dots and say, oh, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be sad.
Wow.
Mommy or daddy is in heaven. Like they brought their own understanding to their loss. And so a lot of people think that because kids are so young, we take for granted that they don't have the capacity to understand what's going on around them. And when in fact that is far further from the truth. They do. They feel things, they internalize things, and you will be surprised of the information that I have gathered things that kids have disclosed with me and being
Really?
in counseling sessions, very, very much aware of what's happening around them. Like I had a kid that lost his mom in a car accident, and when I met with him, the only thing he wanted to do was color. And so he would draw these pictures about his mom being in heaven, but there was always 3 or 4 people in the background crying. And so that was his reality, because the people around him could not contain themselves, and they were just having these emotional outbursts. No, he didn't witness the car accident, but he knew what happened from what they had shared and from what he had heard from those adults around him.
Most children with distress related to trauma in need of help don't receive psychological treatment, and those who do receive a wide variety of treatments.
What do you think about people keeping secrets in the Black community?
I think it can be damaging, because some things don't need to be kept a secret.
When it comes to the point where a child needs to be taken,
Yeah.
it's a hard job, but you would recommend that the family call instead of keeping the secrets?
Yeah, because they don't know what supports can be offered, right? Through the community resource centers, through schools, through somebody in the church. There may be some resource there, so that it doesn't have to come into the point where a social worker is coming in to remove your kid. So
It doesn't have to get there.
yeah.
So people think that they're automatically going to come and take your child.
No, that's not what social work is about. It's more about empowering families and connecting them to resources.
Yeah, why are you so vocal about mental health?
We have a tremendous amount of violence exposure, whether it's direct or indirect. We see war. We see mass shootings. We've seen high rates of suicide. We have to have these conversations. And I think it's real critical for the work that I do that we have it for young kids, because so many young children are being exposed to the same trauma that we're being exposed to as an adult, and they're still developing. A lot of people were diagnosed with medical conditions in their adult years because of trauma exposure when they were children. And trauma being untreated can lead to not even mental health problems per se, but
medical health problems.
Yeah, medical diagnosis.
Physical problems.
Yes, along the line. So I think we have to have these conversations, and we have to have them now.
So what can a person do to heal from trauma?
I think the first thing is just having a conversation of what the trauma exposure was. Sharing it with somebody in a safe space. Doesn't necessarily have to be a counselor, but if you have someone that you trust to share it in a safe space.
If a person has experienced a traumatic event, do you know where they can go immediately following that? What should they do?
It depends on the level of trauma, but I would say first thing is connect with somebody safe that you trust and communicate what the trauma was, and then seek support outside. Most communities have some kind of walk-in clinic, a mental health clinic, or even a regular medical clinic, because sometimes they have the information to us as providers. I would say schools. Schools are always a good resource. Hospitals, local hospitals.
Dr. Long continues to fight for children's rights. Now, she has aspirations of publishing her own children's bibliotherapy book to help build strong Black families.